I think I didn't do anything wrong, just made a joke at dinner about how our son looks nothing like his dad. And the next week, my husband handed me an envelope from a lawyer and a lab. I always thought I could talk my way out of anything, but this time, he had proof. Now, everyone thinks I'm the villain, but I was only being honest. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The Willow Bistro was exactly the kind of place I loved. Upscale but not pretentious, with soft lighting that made everyone look their best. I'd chosen it specifically for our family dinner because I wanted to feel glamorous, sophisticated. Graham had been so quiet lately, and I thought a nice evening out with the kids and his parents would lighten the mood. "The salmon is divine," I announced, cutting into my perfectly prepared fillet. "Much better than that place you suggested last week, Graham." My husband nodded absently, focused on helping our 5-year-old daughter Sophie with her chicken fingers. Across the table, Ruth and Martin Veyron sat with their usual reserved politeness, while my mother Joyce tried to keep the conversation flowing. "Evan, sit up straight, sweetheart," I said to our 7-year-old son, who was slouching in his chair. As he straightened, I caught sight of his profile in the restaurant's warm lighting, and something struck me as amusing. "You know," I said with a laugh, "it's funny how genetics work. Evan looks absolutely nothing like Graham, does he?" I gestured between my son and husband. "I was just thinking about my ex-boyfriend Marcus's kids the other day, saw them on Facebook, and honestly, the resemblance is uncanny." The table went quiet. Graham's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Lyra," my mother said softly, "perhaps we could—" "Oh, don't be so serious, Mom," I continued, warming to my theme. "It's just interesting how these things work out. I mean, look at them side by side." I reached over to turn Evan's face toward Graham. Different nose, different eyes, different everything, really. Sophie's got Graham's chin, but Evan— I shrugged playfully. Must have gotten all my genes, I suppose. Ruth's wineglass clinked against her plate as she set it down harder than necessary. Martin cleared his throat. Graham was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "It's just genetics," I said, suddenly feeling defensive. "Why is everyone being so uptight? I'm just making conversation." "Are you?" Graham asked quietly. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it that made me pause. "Just making conversation?" "Of course I am," I laughed, but it sounded forced even to my ears. "What else would I be doing?" Graham didn't answer. He went back to cutting his steak with mechanical precision, and I felt the need to fill the silence. "I mean, it doesn't mean anything," I said, my voice getting a little higher. "Kids look like who they look like. It's not like I have any control over it." "No," Ruth said sharply. "I suppose you don't." The way she said it made my skin prickle. There was an accusation in her tone that I didn't appreciate. "Ruth, I hope you're not implying something," I said, forcing a smile, "because that would be completely inappropriate." "Would it?" she replied, her grey eyes fixed on mine. "Mum," Graham said quietly, "not here." But the damage was done. The atmosphere had shifted completely. Even the kids seemed to sense it. Sophie had stopped chattering about her food, and Evan was looking between the adults with wide, worried eyes. "I think," my mother said desperately, "we should order dessert. The chocolate cake here is supposed to be excellent." I nodded gratefully, trying to salvage the evening. "That's a wonderful idea. Kids, do you want to share a sundae?" But Graham wasn't playing along. He sat in silence while we ordered dessert, responding to direct questions with monosyllables. When the waiter brought the check, he paid without his usual consultation about splitting it with his parents. As we gathered our coats, Graham leaned close to me. "Do you really think Evan isn't mine?" he asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. "Graham, don't be ridiculous. I was just joking around." "Were you?" "Of course I was," I said, but something in his eyes made me add, "Why would you even ask that?" He didn't answer. He just helped Sophie into her coat and walked toward the exit. In the car on the way home, the silence was deafening. The kids fell asleep in their car seats, and I tried several times to start a conversation, but Graham's responses were minimal. When we pulled into our driveway, he carried both children inside without waiting for me. I lingered in the car for a moment, replaying the evening. Had I gone too far? I'd just been making an observation, being honest about what I saw. If Graham was insecure about his looks, that wasn't my fault. And if other people were going to read more into an innocent comment than was there, well, that said more about them than it did about me. But as I walked toward our front door, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. Graham's question echoed in my mind. Do you really think Evan isn't mine? The thing was, I wasn't entirely sure I could answer that question the way he wanted me to. The house felt different when I woke up the next morning. Graham was already downstairs making coffee, but he didn't offer me a cup like he usually did. He was dressed for work, checking his phone with an intensity that seemed forced. Sleep well? I asked, trying to sound normal. Fine, he replied without looking up. I wanted to address what had happened at dinner, but the kids were already thundering down the stairs, demanding breakfast and attention. In the chaos of getting everyone ready for school and work, it was easy to pretend everything was normal, but it wasn't normal. Graham barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was purely functional. Evan needs his permission slip signed. Sophie has dance class at 4. I'll be late tonight. After he left, I found myself staring at my phone. Before I could think too hard about it, I typed out a text message. Hey, stranger, how's your week going? I sent it to Benji Cardale, an old college friend who'd recently moved back to town. We'd been messaging on and off for a few months. Nothing serious, just friendly catching up. But lately, our conversations had become more frequent, more personal. He was easy to talk to, sympathetic about my marriage troubles, and he made me feel interesting again. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Better now that I'm hearing from you. How was the fancy dinner? I'd mentioned the family dinner to him yesterday, complaining about having to spend an evening with Graham's stuffy parents. Disaster. Made one little joke and everyone acted like I'd committed a crime. What kind of joke? I hesitated, then typed, just commented on how different Evan looks from Graham. Apparently that's forbidden territory. Yikes. That's a sensitive subject for most guys. It shouldn't be. I was just being honest. If people can't handle honesty, that's their problem. True. Want to grab coffee later and vent about it? I stared at the message for a long moment. Coffee with Benji always made me feel better, but something told me it might not be the best idea right now. Better not. Graham's already being weird about everything. Rain check then, but if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. That evening, Graham came home even later than he'd said he would. The kids were already in their pajamas, and I'd eaten dinner alone. Long day? I asked as he microwaved leftovers. You could say that. Want to talk about it? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his expression that made me uncomfortable. Do you want to talk about last night? He asked. What about it? About what you said, about Evan. I sighed. Graham, I already told you. It was just a joke, a casual observation. I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of it. Because it felt like more than that. Well, it wasn't, I said firmly, and I don't appreciate being interrogated in my own kitchen. He was quiet for a moment, then said, Have you been in touch with Marcus lately? The question hit me like a slap. What? No, why would you ask me that? Just wondering. That's a horrible thing to wonder about, I said, my voice rising. I haven't spoken to Marcus in years. The fact that you would even think... I'm not thinking anything, Graham said quietly. I'm just asking. But I could see in his eyes that he was thinking plenty, and suddenly I felt trapped, defensive, angry that I was being put in this position over one innocent comment. This is ridiculous, I said, I'm going to call my sister. I grabbed my phone and went upstairs, closing our bedroom door behind me. Dina answered on the second ring. You're not going to believe what Graham is putting me through, I said without preamble. What now? I told her about the dinner, about Graham's questions, about the way everyone had reacted to what I insisted was a harmless joke. Honestly, Lyra, Dina said when I finished, maybe you should have kept that observation to yourself. Why? Since when is honesty a bad thing? It's not about honesty, it's about tact. So I'm supposed to pretend I don't see what I see. I'm supposed to lie. You're supposed to consider your husband's feelings. What about my feelings? I demanded. What about the fact that he's treating me like a criminal over nothing? Dina sighed. It's not nothing to him, obviously. Well, it should be. He's being insecure and paranoid, and instead of supporting me, everyone's acting like I'm the villain. Are you sure there's nothing else going on? Dina asked carefully. What do you mean? I mean, are you sure you haven't given Graham any reason to be suspicious? The question stung because it came so close to something I didn't want to examine too closely. Of course not, I said. I can't believe you would ask me that. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand why he's reacting so strongly. Because he's insecure. Because he can't handle his wife being honest about what she observes. Because he wants to control everything, including my thoughts. As I said it, I almost believed it. It was easier than considering the alternative. After I hung up, I deleted the text thread with Benji. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I didn't want Graham finding it and getting the wrong idea. He was already being paranoid enough. When I came back downstairs, Graham was loading the dishwasher. He didn't look up when I entered the kitchen. I talked to Dina, I said. She thinks you're overreacting too. Does she? Yes, everyone does. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Graham closed the dishwasher and turned to face me. Maybe, he said. Or maybe I'm finally paying attention to things I should have noticed a long time ago. The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, he said. I'm going to check on the kids. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Graham slept beside me, or pretended to sleep. I couldn't tell which. Every time I started to drift off, I'd remember the look in his eyes at dinner, the questions he'd asked, the way Ruth had stared at me. I told myself I'd done nothing wrong. I'd made an observation, stated a fact. If other people wanted to read more into it than was there, that was their problem, not mine. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I knew it wasn't that simple. And I knew that whatever had started at that dinner table wasn't going to end with a good night's sleep. 2 weeks later, we were at Ruth and Martin's house for Sophie's 5th birthday party. I'd spent the morning getting ready, choosing my outfit carefully, doing my makeup just right. I wanted to look perfect, to show everyone that I was fine, that Graham's cold treatment hadn't affected me at all. The backyard was full of children and parents, all gathered around the princess-themed decorations I'd insisted on. Sophie was in her element, twirling in her pink dress and accepting presents with delighted squeals. I worked the crowd like I always did at these events, making conversation, complimenting other mothers' outfits, sharing parenting anecdotes. It felt good to be social, to be the center of attention in a positive way. Lyra, you look fantastic, said Jennifer Walsh, another mother from Sophie's preschool. That dress is gorgeous on you. Thank you, I beamed. I saw it and just had to have it. Life's too short not to treat yourself, right? From across the yard, I caught sight of Graham helping Evan with a party game. My son's dark hair caught the sunlight, and once again I was struck by how different he looked from his supposed father. You know, I said to the group of mothers around me, loud enough for others to hear, it's so funny how genetics work out. Look at my 2 kids. Sophie looks exactly like Graham, but Evan could be from a completely different family. A few women laughed politely, but I noticed Jennifer glance over at Graham with an uncomfortable expression. Kids are funny that way, she said diplomatically. They really are, I continued, warming to my theme. I always joke that Evan must have gotten every single one of my genes. There's literally nothing of Graham in him. Sometimes I wonder if the hospital mixed up the babies. This time, the laughter was definitely forced. I noticed Ruth approaching our group, her face set in hard lines. "Lyra," she said sharply, "could I speak with you for a moment?" "Of course," I said, though something in her tone made me wary. She led me away from the other mothers, toward the house. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she asked once we were out of earshot. "I'm sorry." Making those comments about Evan, about my son. "I was just making conversation," I said, feeling my defenses rise. "It's not like I said anything untrue." "You're humiliating Graham in front of his friends and neighbors." "I'm not humiliating anyone. I'm just being honest about what I observe." Ruth's eyes flashed. "Are you? Or are you trying to tell us something else?" The accusation in her voice made my cheeks burn. "I don't know what you're implying, but I don't appreciate it." "Don't you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're either trying to hurt my son, or you're trying to confess something without actually having the courage to say it outright." "That's ridiculous," I snapped, "and it's completely out of line." "Is it? Because if you have something to tell us, Lyra, now would be the time." "I have nothing to tell you because there's nothing to tell," I said firmly. "And I think this conversation is over." I walked away from her, my heart pounding with anger, and something else I didn't want to name. How dare she speak to me that way? How dare she make accusations based on innocent observations? I rejoined the party, but the mood had shifted for me. I could feel Ruth watching me, and I noticed that some of the other parents seemed to be giving me a wider berth than usual. When it came time to cut the cake, I made sure to position myself prominently in the photos, my arms around both children. Let Ruth try to question my place in this family. But as we sang Happy Birthday to Sophie, I caught Graham's eye across the crowd. He wasn't singing. He was just watching me with that same unreadable expression he'd worn at the restaurant. After the party, as we were cleaning up, Graham approached me. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "About what?" "About what you said today. What you keep saying." I glanced around to make sure the kids were out of earshot. "Graham, I'm tired of having this conversation. I made some casual comments about genetics. That's all." "No, that's not all," he said, his voice still quiet but with an edge I rarely heard. "You're making these comments in public, in front of our friends, our family, our children. So? So it's humiliating, for me and for Evan. How is it humiliating to point out that he looks like me? Because you're not just saying he looks like you. You're saying he doesn't look like me. You're implying something, and everyone can hear it." I felt cornered, attacked, and I responded the way I always did when I felt threatened. I went on the offensive. "Maybe if you weren't so insecure about your appearance, you wouldn't read so much into innocent comments," I said. Graham's face went white. "Insecure about my appearance?" "Yes, this whole thing is about your ego, isn't it? You can't handle the fact that your son doesn't look like a carbon copy of you." "Lyra," he said, and his voice was very quiet now, "I'm going to ask you one more time. Is there something you need to tell me about Evan?" The question hung between us like a challenge. I could have said something then, could have been honest, could have opened a door to a conversation we probably should have had years ago. Instead, I doubled down. "The only thing I need to tell you is that you're being paranoid and controlling, and I don't appreciate being interrogated every time I make an observation. If you can't handle having a wife who speaks her mind, maybe you should have married someone more submissive." Graham stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded, as if I'd confirmed something he'd been thinking. "Okay," he said. "I'm going to make a doctor's appointment for Evan next week. Just a routine checkup." "Fine," I said, though something in his tone made me uneasy. "And I think we should probably start counseling. Marriage counseling." "If you think that's necessary," I said, though the idea made my stomach clench. "I do," he said, I really do. That night, after the kids were in bed, I called Dina again. He wants to do marriage counseling, I told her. Maybe that's not a bad idea. Whose side are you on? I demanded. Yours, always. But Lyra, maybe you should consider that you might be pushing this too far. Pushing what too far? Being honest? Making public comments about your son's paternity. I never said anything about paternity. You didn't have to. Everyone can read between the lines. Well, that's their problem, not mine. But as I hung up the phone, I wondered if it was becoming my problem too. And I wondered what Graham meant by a routine checkup for Evan. Something told me it wasn't going to be routine at all. The dental office where I worked had become my sanctuary. Dr. Peterson ran a quiet practice with a small staff, and I'd been his receptionist for 3 years. It was the kind of job where I could handle the phones, schedule appointments, and still have time to think. Or to text. I'd re-established contact with Benji after deleting our conversation thread. It felt safer to text him during work hours when Graham wasn't around, and I found myself looking forward to our exchanges more and more. How's the marriage counseling going? He texted one Tuesday afternoon. First session is tomorrow. Should be fun, I replied sarcastically. Are you nervous? Why would I be nervous? I haven't done anything wrong. Of course not, but therapy can be intense. I appreciated that Benji never questioned my version of events. He listened when I vented about Graham's suspicious behavior, his cold treatment, the way his family was turning against me. Want to grab coffee after your appointment? Might be good to decompress with a friend. I hesitated. Graham and I were supposed to go together to the counseling session, then pick up the kids from his parents' house afterward. Can't tomorrow. Rain check. Always. That evening, Graham came home with a manila folder under his arm. He set it on the kitchen counter and started making dinner without saying anything about it. What's that? I asked, nodding toward the folder. Just some paperwork, he said. What kind of paperwork? Insurance stuff. Medical records for the kids. Something in his tone made me uneasy. Why do you need medical records? Updating our coverage, making sure everything's current. He was being evasive, and I didn't like it. But before I could press further, Evan and Sophie came running into the kitchen, demanding attention and snacks. The next day's counseling session was exactly as uncomfortable as I'd expected. Dr. Martinez was a middle-aged woman, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She asked us to explain why we were there. Graham went first. I feel like my wife and I aren't communicating well. There are trust issues. What kind of trust issues? Dr. Martinez asked. Graham glanced at me. Lyra has been making comments in public that make me question things about our family. What kind of comments? I jumped in before Graham could answer. I made some observations about how our son looks different from my husband. Apparently, that's not allowed. Can you tell me more about these observations? Just that Evan doesn't really resemble Graham physically. He looks more like me, or like other people in my family. It's not unusual. Genetics are complicated. Dr. Martinez nodded. And Graham, how do these comments make you feel? Humiliated, he said quietly. Especially when she makes them in public. It feels like she's trying to tell people something without saying it directly. What do you think she's trying to tell them? Graham was quiet for a long moment. That Evan isn't my son. The words hung in the air between us. Dr. Martinez looked at me. Lyra, is that what you're trying to communicate? Of course not, I said quickly. I'm just making casual observations about genetics. If people want to read more into it than that, it says more about them than it does about me. But you understand how your husband might interpret these comments. I understand that he's being overly sensitive and paranoid. Dr. Martinez made a note. Graham, have you expressed to Lyra how these comments make you feel? Yes, multiple times, but she continues to make them. Because I have a right to speak my mind, I interjected. I shouldn't have to censor every casual observation because my husband is insecure. Insecure? Graham's voice was sharp. You think this is about insecurity? What else would it be about? He stared at me for a long moment. Lyra, I need to ask you directly. Have you had an affair? The question hit me like a physical blow. How dare you ask me that? Have you? No, I said, though even as I said it, I wondered if my relationship with Benji could be classified as something more than friendship. I can't believe you would ask me that, especially here. Dr. Martinez intervened. Let's take a step back. Graham, what makes you feel the need to ask that question? The comments about Evan, her behavior lately, the way she's been protective of her phone, working late more often. I work the same hours I've always worked, I protested. Do you? Because I called the office last week to ask you something, and Dr. Peterson said you'd left early. I felt my cheeks burn. I had left early that day, to meet Benji for coffee, but that didn't mean anything. I had errands to run, I said. What errands? I don't have to account for every minute of my day to you, Graham. Dr. Martinez held up a hand. Let's focus on communication rather than accusations. Lyra, can you understand why your husband might feel concerned about these various factors? I can understand that he's looking for problems where none exist, I said. I can understand that instead of trusting his wife, he's decided to become suspicious and controlling. The session continued for another 30 minutes, but we didn't make much progress. Dr. Martinez gave us some exercises to work on at home, communication techniques, trust-building activities. As we walked to the car afterward, Graham was quiet. That went well, I said sarcastically. Did it? You basically accused me of having an affair in front of a stranger. I asked a question. A horrible question. Graham unlocked the car but didn't get in immediately. Lyra, I need you to sign something. What? He pulled a paper from his jacket pocket. It's for the insurance update I mentioned. I need your consent for some medical record requests. I glanced at the form. It looked official, with lots of legal language I didn't bother to read carefully. What kind of medical records? Just routine stuff. Birth certificates, hospital records from when the kids were born. The insurance company wants to verify everything. It seemed reasonable enough. I signed it and handed it back to him. There, I said. Happy now? But Graham didn't look happy. He looked like a man who was preparing for something, though I couldn't imagine what. That night, I texted Benji from the bathroom while Graham was putting the kids to bed. Counseling was a disaster. He actually asked if I was having an affair. Yikes. What did you say? The truth. That I'm not. Good. Are you okay? I will be. Just need to get through this rough patch. If you need anything, I'm here. I deleted the conversation thread again before going to bed. It was becoming a habit. Text, delete, repeat. Not because I was doing anything wrong, but because I knew Graham would misinterpret it if he saw it. As I lay in bed that night, listening to Graham's steady breathing beside me, I tried to convince myself that everything would work out. This was just a rough patch, like I'd told Benji. Marriages went through difficult periods. We'd get past it. But something about the way Graham had asked me to sign that form nagged at me. Something about the look in his eyes when he'd asked about the affair. He was planning something. I just didn't know what. 3 weeks later, Graham asked me to meet him at an address downtown during my lunch break. He said it was important, that we needed to discuss our situation away from the house and the kids. The address turned out to be a family law office. I stood outside the building for several minutes, my stomach churning with anxiety and anger. What was he doing? Why were we meeting at a lawyer's office? I found Graham in a conference room with a woman in her 50s wearing a crisp navy suit. She introduced herself as Patricia Hendricks, family law attorney. Mrs. Veyron, she said, please have a seat. I'd prefer to stand, I said, though my legs felt shaky. What is this about? Graham was sitting at the conference table with 2 manila envelopes in front of him. His face was pale but determined. Lyra, he said quietly, I need to show you something. He pushed one of the envelopes toward me. This is the result of the medical records request you signed. What medical records request? The insurance form, except it wasn't for insurance. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a laboratory report with official letterhead. The words swam in front of my eyes, but certain phrases jumped out. DNA analysis, paternity test, probability of paternity, 0%. You tricked me, I whispered. I got the truth, Graham replied. I stared at the paper, trying to process what I was seeing. This can't be right. Labs make mistakes all the time. I had it run twice, Graham said. 2 different labs, same result. Ms. Hendricks spoke gently. Mrs. Veyron, we understand this is difficult, but we need to discuss the implications of this discovery. Implications? My voice was getting higher. The implication is that my husband violated my trust, tricked me into signing something, and invaded my privacy. The implication, Graham said, his voice steady, is that you've been lying to me for 7 years. I never lied about anything. You let me believe Evan was my son. He is your son, I said desperately. Biology doesn't matter. You've raised him. You've loved him. You're his father in every way that counts. But not biologically. So what? So what if he's not biologically yours? Does that change how you feel about him? Graham's composure cracked slightly. Of course it changes things. Everything changes. Ms. Hendricks intervened. Mrs. Veyron, we're not here to assign blame or to hurt anyone. We're here to discuss how to move forward in a way that protects everyone involved, especially the children. Move forward how? Graham pushed the second envelope toward me. These are separation papers. The room seemed to tilt. Separation papers? I can't do this anymore, Lyra. I can't pretend everything is normal. I can't keep living with someone who's been lying to me for 7 years. I didn't lie. I never said Evan was definitely yours. I just didn't say he wasn't. That's lying by omission. That's, I struggled to find the words. That's protecting our family. By deceiving me? By not destroying everything over something that doesn't matter? It matters to me, Graham said quietly. It matters a lot. I opened the second envelope with shaking hands. The legal language was dense, but I could make out the key points. Graham was seeking legal separation, requesting primary custody of Sophie, and asking for financial safeguards. You want to take Sophie away from me? I want to protect her, Graham said, and I want to make sure you can't make any major financial decisions without my consent until we sort this out. You're punishing me. I'm protecting myself and our daughter. What about Evan? Graham's face crumpled slightly. What about him? You're just going to abandon him because of some test results. I'm not abandoning anyone, but I need to figure out what this means, what my legal obligations are, what my emotional obligations are. I felt like I was drowning. Graham, please, we can work through this. We can go back to counseling. We can figure this out. Can we? Because every time I've asked you directly about this, you've deflected or attacked me, or made me feel like I was being paranoid. Because you were being paranoid. Was I? Or was I finally paying attention to what you've been trying to tell everyone for months? Ms. Hendricks cleared her throat. Mrs. Veyron, you have the right to legal representation. I'd recommend you consult with your own attorney before signing anything. I looked at the papers again, then at Graham. Who is he? What? Evan's biological father. Who is he? Graham shook his head. I was hoping you would tell me. I started to speak, then stopped. Did I really want to have this conversation here, now, with a lawyer present? Is it someone I know? Graham asked. I thought about Benji, about our recent conversations, about the timing. But Benji had only been back in town for a few months. The timeline didn't work. It was a long time ago, I said finally. It doesn't matter who it was. It matters to me. Why? So you can confront him. So you can make this even messier. So I can understand what happened. So I can figure out how to move forward. I looked at the separation papers again. If I sign these, what happens? We separate legally. I move out, or you do. We work out custody arrangements. We figure out our finances. And if I don't sign them, Ms. Hendricks answered, then Mr. Veyron can file for separation anyway. It just becomes more contentious and expensive. I felt trapped, cornered, like everyone was against me. I need time to think. Of course, Ms. Hendricks said, take the papers with you, consult with an attorney. But Mrs. Veyron, I should tell you that Mr. Veyron is prepared to move forward with or without your cooperation. As I left the law office, I felt like my entire world was collapsing. In the span of an hour, I'd gone from being a married woman with 2 children to being... What? A single mother? A woman whose husband no longer trusted her? I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Dina. He had a paternity test done, I said when she answered. Oh, Lyra. He tricked me into signing consent forms. He's been planning this for weeks. What does the test say? I closed my eyes. That Evan isn't his. Dina was quiet for a long moment. Is that true? I don't know, I said, though even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I'd always known, deep down, that there was a possibility. I'd just chosen not to think about it. What are you going to do? I don't know that either. But as I sat there, staring at the legal papers in my lap, I realized that for the first time in months, I wasn't in control of the situation. Graham had taken control, had forced the truth into the open, had made decisions without consulting me. And I had no idea how to get the control back. 6 months later, I sat across from Graham in the same law office where we'd once signed our mortgage papers. This time, the papers ended our marriage. The custody battle had been brutal. The judge ruled for stability, joint custody, but Graham would keep the house in primary care of Evan. I'd see Sophie half the time. Evan would stay mostly with his father. It's not about punishment, the judge had said. Maybe not, but it felt like it. When I signed the papers, my hand shook. Graham's didn't. I don't hate you, he said quietly, but I can't trust you, and I can't live with someone I can't trust. What about Evan? I asked. He's my son, Graham said. That's not changing. You were right. Biology isn't everything, but honesty is. Outside, Ruth waited by his car. I hope you find what you were looking for, she said. Whatever made you destroy your family, I hope it was worth it. I didn't answer. That night in my small new apartment, the silence was unbearable. The kids were with Graham. When my phone buzzed, I almost hoped it was one of them. It wasn't. Benji, heard about the divorce? I'm here if you need anything. I stared at the message, then deleted it. Looking out at the dark street, I thought of Graham reading to the kids, of everything I'd lost, not just my marriage or home, but their trust. And for what? For the thrill of saying things I shouldn't have said, for confusing cruelty with honesty. Maybe the real truth wasn't what I'd spoken, but what I'd refused to see. That I'd built my sense of worth on being right, not being kind. That I'd used honesty as a weapon, not a virtue. Tomorrow, Sophie would visit. Maybe I could start again with her. But tonight, I had to face the truth I'd spent years avoiding. I hadn't been brave or honest. I'd been selfish. And if I ever wanted to be the kind of mother my children deserved, I'd have to learn what real honesty meant. It would be a long road back, but for the first time in months, I was ready to take the first step, alone. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.